welcome everyone to the community call, first one of 2019. Happy to have everybody here. A few notes about the community call as we get started. First of all, if you don't already have the recurring monthly invite, there's the link to download it. As Dana mentioned, we're moving to monthly calls instead of quarterly starting in this year. So the next call will already be about 1 month from today on February 13th. And in each call, for those of you who've been joining us so far, as you know, we cover a lot about what's new with Office.js, the platform and the APIs. You have a chance to interact with and meet the product team, members of the product team who are actually building Office add-ins and the JavaScript APIs. And we typically try to do a deep dive into one subject on each call so you get to see something in depth. And then, of course, Q&A as well. Today's call, we have quite a few things lined up, really full agenda. We'll start with an overview as we usually do. We have a call for your feedback and input about single sign-on. I'll cover that in just a minute. We're going to learn about what's new with the Outlook JavaScript API and also the Excel JavaScript API. Lots of new things coming there. And we're doing something different this time. For the first time, we actually have a customer joining us who's going to present about an add-in that he's built that uses, in this case, custom functions and a task pane. So that'll be really cool to see the progress made there. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A if we have time. Can you please, somebody's not muted there. Can you please mute if you're, thank you. All right, quick look at the presenters. I won't spend any time here, but lots of folks joining us today. I will highlight Peter Tippett. He's the founder at Now Functions in Australia. He's the customer that I mentioned who's joining us today to share with us the add-in he's built. And with that, I'll hand off to Doug. Doug's going to do a brief overview of Office add-ins.
Great, thanks, Kim. This will just be a quick high-level overview for those on the call who are new to the modern web add-in extensibility model in Office. So the basic concept here is that Office add-ins are simply web apps. So you stand up a web app that you write it in JavaScript, write it in Node, or write it in some other language. And that web app, then we have a manifest file that points at your web app, and that's what gets loaded in as an Office add-in. So an Office add-in is essentially a manifest file pointing at a web app, and then that's what loads it into Office. And I'm glossing over a bunch of details, but just want to remind everyone, this is the architecture we're talking about on these calls, as opposed to the old COM-style add-ins, which some of you may remember from in the past. And then once you have your add-in structured that way, you can deploy it a bunch of different ways. You can run it on all the different places Office runs. And within your add-in, you have access to anything a web app can do. So, of course, you can call APIs on the web and so on. But the really cool thing that allows for really tight integration with Office is the Office.js layer that lets you get at all of the APIs and the Office clients and Office services. And so that's how you can integrate with your document. So through Office.js, you're reading and writing the content of the live document or message that's being composed or worksheet, that sort of thing. And then you also have access to all the other APIs you might use in a web app. So that was a super quick overview because we have a lot to pack in today, but here's where you can learn a lot more if you haven't looked into this yet, aka.ms/office-add-ins docs, and that's where all of the documentation from our team is, and there are 5-minute quick starts for the various clients there, which are a great place to start if you're new to the Office add-ins model.
Awesome, thanks, Doug. All right, so switching gears a little bit, we wanted to announce today that there's a new PM for single sign-on feature in Office add-ins. His name is Nitesh, and he's really looking to dive in and understand your needs around SSO, how you use it, what kind of needs you have there. So he's really looking for your input here. 2 calls to action for those who are interested. One is he's created a web form. You can access it here at this aka.ms Office add-ins SSO link. And he's asked that if you're interested in providing feedback about SSO, go ahead and click that link or go to that URL and fill out that form. And then once you've done that, feel free to reach out to Nitesh also at the email address here. He's very interested in connecting with customers and having conversations around your needs regarding SSO. So just a quick call out there about the changes coming to SSO and your input would be greatly appreciated. In the future, we'll probably look to do a deep dive at some point, and maybe next month or the month after, about SSO. I know it's something we haven't covered yet in a previous call, but I think it's of interest to a lot of folks, so look for that coming soon as well. All right, next up, we have Sahel with the Outlook team to talk about the Outlook JavaScript API and what's new there. Sahel?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sahel Zafar, and I'm a program manager on the Outlook extensibility platform. Wanted to share some updates from the last community call that we had. So if you remember, we were working on a bunch of capabilities that were in preview. And related to those, we have, as we were dog fooding them and internally testing them, we have run into a couple of issues because of which we are still keeping them in preview for the time being, starting with the shared folders and delegate access. The capability is currently in preview and will stay in preview for a little bit more. The capability allows an add-in to run in a delegate mode. So the scenario would be that, say, you're a business admin scheduling meetings on behalf of your executive, and you use an add-in to order catering for that meeting. So those add-ins, previously, those add-ins wouldn't run for a delegate, but with this, add-ins can run for delegates as well. But as I said, our original target was to launch that capability by end of December, but we are still fine-tuning it, and we are hoping that we can launch it by end of Q1. The second capability we were also planning to launch last year was the ability for an add-in to run when an email is sent. The capability currently is present for Outlook for Web, and we were making it cross-platform, meaning enabling the same functionality for Mac and Outlook desktop as well. But we are finding that actually we need to do some more testing on it as we are dogfooding this capability in internal Microsoft tenant. So right now, I do not have a timeline that I can share on this. But again, as always, our goal is that to launch it as soon as we can. Just a couple of other call outs about this is that, so the scenario for this is like a lot of partners have been asking for it is some of the scenarios are that like when you're sending an email, an add-in can run and insert a signature into the email before it goes out. There are some use cases where email should not be allowed to send before user classifies an email such as like normal or highly classified. And then there are scenarios such as inserting a tracking pixel. So this capability will enable scenarios like that. On a similar note, we are also thinking through some more, I guess, flavors to this capability in a sense that right now it's a hard block that if an add-in is launched on send, then if the add-in cannot do its operation for whatever reason, the email sent is blocked. For some scenarios where email classification is needed, this scenario makes sense. But for other scenarios where like you're inserting a tracking pixel, this probably does not make sense. So we are contemplating, should we introduce the concept of a soft and a hard block? So if you have any scenarios related to either of these and have some feedback, please feel free to send them our way. Kim, I don't know, would love to, once I'm done, if you can share some ways that like the participants of the call can share feedback. That's going to be super helpful. One other thing I want to call out on OnSend is that right now our plan is that add-ins that leverage block OnSend capability will not be allowed in store. They will only, however, companies and partners can build them as line of business add-ins, and individual tenants can sideload them and install them, and administrator can push those add-ins to their users in their tenant. And the reason for that decision is that we are still thinking through the right governance process, because if we just allow any add-in to block the send pipeline, that can have an adverse impact on outlook and productivity of the end users. So we want to be very mindful of that, and we want to make sure that we have appropriate governance mechanisms for both users as well as the administrators before we allow something like that. Last but not the least, we have been working on requirement set 1.8. This is also something that's in progress. We are hoping to make it generally available by end of Q1. Again, it's not a concrete timeline, but that's the target we are pushing really hard towards. Some of the key APIs in the new requirement set is internet headers. So it's a really useful capability, especially for encrypting and decrypting emails. You can set internet headers, and then you can check, your add-in can check the presence of an internet header and take appropriate action based on that in the email. We're also adding more capabilities to manipulate attachments on the JavaScript side. Previously, what used to be that you actually had to call REST or EWS to get attachments, especially in Compose. But in the new requirement set, we're adding an API to get attachment details, the metadata for an attachment in Compose. Now you can get the attachment content in both read and Compose, and it can either be a file or an item attachment. And then we are also exposing the attachment changed event so that your add-in can run or take appropriate action if a user removes an attachment or adds an attachment. So that's basically what's new at Outlook. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now or post them in the chat window, and I will reply them there.
Thanks, Sahil. And I'll share a link at the end of the call, near the end of the call, where you can provide feedback to a former, as Sahil mentioned, he's interested in hearing your feedback about the things he just discussed. So I'll provide a link where you can do that. All right, next up, we have Kair. He's the program manager for custom functions in Excel, and he's here to talk about some of the recent changes to custom functions, which are still in preview for the time being. Kair?
Hey, everyone. I wanted to just kick things off and just say thank you for a lot of your feedback. So for folks who aren't aware, custom functions are a new capability of Office add-ins specific to Excel, and they allow you to create your own function. And I like to say it feels like some, because that is our goal. We want these custom functions to be just look like any other function inside of Excel. That said, one of the things that I do want to be clear on is, hey, this is not a new type of add-in that we're shipping. It's a new building block. So you may want to think about holistically how you can add custom functions to your existing Excel add-in, or if you have a scenario in mind where you want to add new functions, think about how you could use other components of an add-in, like a task pane or a dialog, to help make the experience easier for your users. So one of the things that we are doing at Ignite, we announced the custom functions preview and the custom functions runtime. Since then, we've been working closely with all of you guys and essentially looking at your feedback and looking at what your requirements are. So from October through December, we made quite a few changes. We allow variable return types, the ability to have optional parameters. Recently in December, we released the ability to get the calling address of your function call. So for folks who are familiar with COM or VBA, this was called caller.address. So looking ahead, Kim, if you coming up next week in our January update, we did have one change to announce. So due to just developer feedback, one of the things we realized was one of our API names was confusing, so we renamed it, hopefully for more clarity. And so custom functions mapping, and I actually have a typo in there on purpose, so it's folks were calling it custom functions mapping, and they were trying it out. And the actual name was custom functions mappings. But anyways, we're changing that to custom functions.associate. The documentation and then the Yo Office templates were updated yesterday. Likewise, we've split out the custom functions changelog into its own separate article, so as a way to keep up to date. So one of the things here is we'll continue to support the old way of custom function mappings for a couple of months, but if you are building a Excel add-in with custom functions, we want you to use the new API, and you can do that today. All right, so coming soon, we have quite a bit of additional work that we want to do to improve the experience before we GA. Again, a lot of this is based off of your feedback, so volatile functions, allowing you to have repeating parameters, having a great developer experience. And I think one of the things we'll talk about that it was a requirement that came up through the custom function partners, but we think will benefit all Office add-ins, is we're working on the ability to suppress your web add-in on Windows in favor of your existing COM add-ins. So if you have COM add-ins out in the store that have more capabilities than the web add-ins offer today, this will allow you to use your users to use their COM add-ins on Windows, but then on the other platforms use web add-ins. So I think maybe in next month or the month after, we can provide an update here. So one of the things to stay updated, if we go to the next slide, is we've kicked off weekly calls on Excel and custom functions where you can get more details. Email me if you want the invite. Likewise, we are actively iterating on our documentation. This is in dev preview, so I did want to offer a quick tip to stay updated whenever our documentation gets updated. The Docs platform has a RSS feed that you can click on through the search results. So we'll send this link out later. So, all right, thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Kier. Good stuff happening with custom functions, really exciting. And nice segue also to our customer spotlight today. As mentioned earlier, Peter Tippett is joining us. He's the founder at Now Functions in Australia. He has built a really cool Excel add-in that uses a combination of, actually has two separate add-ins, I believe, under the covers today. But from the user perspective, the experience is a task pane plus custom functions. So Peter, feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and I'll let you take it away.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can, and we can see your screen now. Perfect.
Good. Okay, so just to give you a bit of background, I developed this product, would you believe, approximately 25 years ago using the old version of Excel and my own accounting software. I re-looked at this recently to do with cloud-based systems, and basically it allows your Excel to talk directly to your accountant in real time instead of doing an export and import capability. And that's where functions come into its power. You open up the spreadsheet, it's current. It's no more out of date or anything else. And it gives you the power of actually giving proper analysis. Like I had a TV station using it where in their costing spreadsheet, they pulled the data from their accounting software, but it also included information to do with hours of daylight for filming, which affected the profitability of what was happening. So basically, and that was the biggest problem, is all your BI systems only just taking data that's in your database. There's a lot of data that is not very subjective that has a big impact. So that's on the power of this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to be looking at connecting to Xero. Xero is a cloud-based accounting system used by about 1.5 million businesses around the world. And it's been written to look to QuickBooks and all that. So the first part of the chart is just using normal admin functionality of loading data from a server that talks to Xero and pulls the data back. Then I'll load the P&L, which has all the custom functions and why I've done it the way I've done. Also show how I've used the sidebar and a couple of little things I've added to allow me to know whether the system is working. There's the ability to pull version code out of my JavaScript code and also a version out of my backend. So I'm just going to switch across and hopefully that's all there. So I've got a task pane here, which is showing the functionality of what we can do. Now,
Hey, Peter, we're still seeing your demo slide here.
Okay, has it flipped across?
Not yet, no.
Okay, that's typical.
You need to stop sharing.
Okay, it's sharing. I know what it is.
You might try stop sharing in the Teams meeting and then reshare that window.
Let me just going to flip it across here. Share. Share. Come on. And has it picked up my Excel spreadsheet?
No, it's still seeing your PowerPoint slide.
Let's take an over the screen. Okay, let me just quit my PowerPoint. And Fusion to show Microsoft Edge on my system. Okay, have you got it now?
Now we can see it. We're seeing Excel. Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, great. It's just fun of switching screens. Sorry to say, I normally use a Macintosh, so. Okay, so basically, I've built this with two add-ins at the moment. I have the one that manages the task pane to connect to Xero and all that, and then I have the custom functions separate. I know that you can combine both of them, but I've recently been talking to a couple of people, and I've actually kept them separate. So I can share the spreadsheet and nobody give them access to the custom functions and not to the task pane management. So they don't get the ability to change the Xero connections and anything like that. So they stay connected. So here's the task pane. I can connect to Xero or disconnect. One of the things I have the ability is to connect to multiple copies of Xero. I have one client, because I've also done this in Google Sheets. He has 5 companies around the world. He pulls into 5 different tabs in the spreadsheet for 12 months worth of data, combines all that with budgets and another 5 tabs, then allows him to do all the analysis and predictions. It also takes that data and restructures it to meet requirements for reporting to the Australian Stock Exchange, because it's a public company. That spreadsheet he used to spend 2 days every month doing, he now spends 10 seconds doing. So it's quite a massive thing, and he knows it's accurate. So there's the task pane for connecting to Xero. I just come in here, allow connection, and then hopefully it then connects, allows me to connect to Xero using the normal authorization models. Allow access. And this is calling the dialogues, comes back, and then close that window and populates back into here to say demo company. There are bugs in this at the moment because it's not in release mode. I then have the ability to just import the chart of accounts, but I'll just show you now is the custom function I have here. So I can go equals now x dot, and if I click on version, this talks to my server in the background and pulls down what version of the server I'm running and what is the current build IDs and all that for me. So that's talked through the HTTP call to my servers to tell me what it is. I can also go equals now org name, and you'll notice here I've got actually optional. So here I've got optional values activated. This allows me to do multi-company. This is now connecting to my system, which is now talked to Xero, pull the data back, reformat it, and fire it back here, and told me what company I'm running. Now, one of the biggest problems I've learned over the years is people have what's called blank page issues. They don't know what to do when they've got something, when it's blank. So what I've built here is the ability to load your monthly like P&L. So I can click here and watch profit and loss. Now, instead of doing a normal export import, like most people do, and hopefully that is working, yep. It has now run all this and done a custom functions. So if I click on this cell, instead of just pulling the data like every other export import system does, it now has a direct link from the account ID to the GL balance. So if I click on here, you'll see I have account ID, month, I have the option for organization ID, and specify category, tracking, or cash if you want it to be accrual or cash base. And I do this, and that's just automatically updated. So I can come here and change this to be 12th, 2018. Hit that, and now it's returned and it's updated the figures. So you can see it's a relative, and I'll tell you some of the tricks I've done to get the speed I'm doing once I've gone through that. So I've done that. That then's calculated. Come on, they are refreshed, done. So it makes it real easy for somebody. So I can copy that, paste that, change that to October, and away we go. Now, one of the things I've learned, once you give people like a sample sheet with all the things, they then will go, okay, I want that to be bold, and I want it to have an underline, and then they'll start going around and formatting. Then they can share this sheet with just the manifest for custom functions, and people then can get the data. And they can actually like share just the divisions and use the category to control that, and away they go. So I'll go back to PowerPoint, and I'll talk about how it's internally structured. So, sorry, there's one thing I should show you. Here is I've got functions. So that talks about all the different functions so people can actually see all what they are. And I'm using the help pane to do that. And then they've got the normal help to allow them to do more, which talks about error codes and how to use the tabs and all that. So making it feel like consistent like normal Microsoft tabs are. So when I go back to the system, so I've shown you the sidebar, test functions, P&L. But in behind the scenes, I'm actually running a cache to allow it to have the performance, because the biggest problem with Google Sheets is it runs on a server, everything. So there's a whole lot of issues with caching and a whole lot of tricks. One of the things I like to Excel that's really nice is I can actually use the local cache, even though it's only a 5 meg limit. So when I call a function, I check the cache for all the data. If it's there, I select the item, and you can see the speed of the refresh of data. Instead of doing 500 calls to the server, it gets things like the client's talking about. He's got 200 accounts, 12 months. So that's 2,400 calls he would be making to a server for that data. And if you're on your mobile hotspot because you're out somewhere and you've got bad latency, that takes forever. And this is what this cache gets around. Also, Xero has some really heavy limits. And also their data is actually, I get back, is not a nice format. So my backend is reformatting the data into a nice format to return back to Excel for my JavaScript on Excel to use, remove a lot of unnecessary information. Now, the thing I have, like with Excel, is Excel has a rate limiting. You can only do 60 calls a minute. If you exceed that for an organization, you've got to wait a minute. There's also some security. You're not allowed to store the access tokens on client machines where they could steal the access token and use it. So you've got to be a thing. And as I said, the data structure is not friendly. And the API is actually quite slow when you're doing calling accounting data. Normally, on average, it's between 4 and 10 seconds. My back-end development, I have used the Node.js for local development, for debugging. I write in JavaScript. I don't write in TypeScript. And I've used the cache model. My back-end is actually in my live system is all in Go, because that allows me to do between a 1 and 3 millisecond response rate with the caching and all that. And that's also my web server, so I do not use Node.js as my backend system. And so I have a script that copies the bundle files from my Node.js when I'm happy with it across into my Go code, which then pushes up to my testing service and my development service once I'm approved. I think I've covered everything there, Kim.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for sharing. And just for everyone on the call, just to kind of recap here. So Peter, what he just showed, he's a customer who's used the Office JavaScript APIs and custom functions to build the add-ins he just showed. As he mentioned, he opted to do it as 2 separate add-ins. He has functional reasons in terms of how he wants to distribute, have the flexibility to distribute one or the other or both together for doing that. But keep in mind, if you are building an add-in, as Keir mentioned earlier, custom functions is merely a feature or another building block that you can incorporate within an add-in. And so an add-in could just be custom functions, or it could be task pane plus custom functions plus other things. And so keep that in mind as well. But super work, Peter. Really, really cool to see some of the things that customers are doing with custom functions. Awesome. All right, so we're moving on here. We're moving to Juan and team. Juan and Raymond will talk about the Excel JavaScript API and some new things that are coming there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. That was a great example of what you can do today with custom functions and add-ins. Hello, everyone. It's super exciting to be with you this morning to talk about new investments in the JavaScript API. So we're going to talk about 3 things during the next 20 minutes. We're going to talk about a quick recap of where we are in terms of the releases of the JavaScript API. Then we're going to talk about a little bit about one of the #1 requests for APIs in our user voice channel, the comments API. And then Raymond is going to share us, an update on the Slicer API. So let's get started. So quick recap here, folks. As you know, the team has been very focused in the last year or so on incrementing the Excel APIs that we have currently. In the last year was a great year for Excel developers because we are adding almost thousands of new APIs, So the Excel API, JavaScript API, it's getting extremely rich. It's reaching a point very fast to be in par with what you can do with VBA or, BSTO solutions. So we are very happy about that. You're actually, one of the things that you probably know is that we actually are publishing everything that is going to be included in the API in our open spec, in our open. And if you go to that link, you're going to see that you have all the things that are being working on that are currently in beta. So today we're going to share Slicer and comments, but if you can see here, you can actually navigate and see all the methods and all the properties that you're able to be using,
Office add-ins.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Excel
has new things.
I'm sorry to interrupt here, Juan. Somebody's not on mute. Can you please mute if you're not presenting? Thank you.
Was sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, I saw.
Okay, thank you, Katharina. Sorry about that, folks. In build last year, as you know, we actually announced the GA of the 1.7 APIs that includes protection, styles. We had a bunch of chart functionality. We added events, hyperlinks, a bunch of charts, trend lines, and so on. Then at Ignite, we also actually GA'd the 1.8 in September. That included, we finally released data validation, included, more rich API for pivots, more events, for the calculation engine, charts. We have the create workbook API, remove duplicates. This is just a friendly reminder of what's available, guys, and what you can actually include in your new in your web add-ins, right? And then we're currently working on shipping our beta APIs right now. As you know, here we're including also shapes, and we're including new chart support. We're going to have auto filter for ranges. For the first time in the Excel API history, we're going to be able to do these continuous ranges with ARIA, special cells, page layouts for reporting. So we're shipping a very good amount of APIs. And we are including to the beta, we are announcing today, both comments and Slicer APIs. Let's talk about comments. Lily is the PM for this feature, but unfortunately she's flying right now. I'm going to be sharing with you this on her behalf. It's a very cool feature, and again, the #1 request in user voice. So that's keep going, keep upvoting stuff, guys. We are listening to that, and we release it, no? So one of the things that probably you have noticed if you have worked with the latest Insider's Fast build is that in Excel we are introducing a new type of comments, which you can see here in the left. It's a little bit more rich than what used to be notes, as you can see on the right-hand side here, in the sense that you can actually have a conversation around the comment. You can have a thread going on. You can actually visualize who made a comment and when he did it, and you can actually reply and all that stuff. No? So this is going to be the new way of doing comments in Excel in a very few weeks, So the API that we are proposing, actually, it's mapped to the new stuff. You will be able to do kind of rich comments with this API. No? Very briefly, the design for this API, it's quite straightforward. You basically have a collection of comments that it's available in both in the workbook. So you want to get all the comments in the workbook or in the worksheet. In the one
worksheet.
Yeah. Somebody's still not muted. And then you have in the collection, well, you use the collection to add, to get how many comments are available right there. And you can actually get a specific comment in that collection. Then we have a comment object that allows you to delete, allows you to modify certain properties of comments, and actually also reply to a comment. As you know, they show you that you can actually have a thread going on. And that's it. It's very straightforward. What I'm going to show you now is some, well, here are the scenarios. Of course, you can, the API covers, adding comments and replies. And by the way, this is available in builds 16.11.308, which actually is not yet in Insiders Fast. So it's going to be in a couple of weeks. I think you're going to be able to play with it. I'm going to show you a demo that is using that build, but it's internal. It will see the light very soon on Insiders Fast. Okay. With this new first release, you're going to be able to add comments and replies, as well as updating or editing a comment, and deleting and clearing comments. And then we're going to add other stuff. Like, for example, you're going to be able to resolve comments, navigation to previous and other comments, get authors and get ranges. So that is the functionality that we're going to ship further once it's available in the product. So let's go through a quick demo of this. So again, you're going to be able to play with this in a few weeks. But what I have here, it's basically a range of items, of random numbers. And this is a Scriptlab snippet that we're going to make available after the call, so you can actually see the code samples and run it in a few weeks again when you install the Insiders Fast. The code is straightforward, so this button is just adding a comment. And as you can see in the UI, well, you can actually either, when you select the cell, you're going to be able to see the comment, or in the notes, in the show comments, you're going to be able to see a task pane with all the comments that are associated with that range, or in this workbook, sorry. You can actually delete the comment. I'm going to add it again. As you can see, it's added. You can visualize it. If the comments task pane is open, you see it there, and if not, you see it in the cell. So you can see here that I'm able to, let me open the comments window here. So if I edit the comment, you will see that the comment was changed. I delete, but you can add replies. You can edit those replies, and then you can delete. Okay, so it's a very simple CRUD type of API right now, very straightforward. And as you can see here from the code samples, well, you're getting, this is kind of in sync with the rest of the API. You have a collection of comments, and then from the collection, you can add the comment into the range of interests. Quite simple. Or you can actually add at the workbook level. You can add the context of the comment, and then you can indicate exactly the range where you want to see this information. This is the edit and delete. Delete is basically you need to have reference to a comment by its ID, and then you can delete it. And modifying, you use the getItemAdd method that we have in collections, and then once you have a reference to it, you can make the changes that you need. Add a comment reply. So with this, you basically need to have first a handle to a comment. So you're basically getting an item by cell. You provide the range, and once you have the comment there, you can go to the replies collection and add, a reply to that comment. So it's pretty straightforward. The design of this API, it's currently in the open spec. So hopefully it's useful for you guys. Please go there, give us feedback. Right now, we are at a very good moment of making changes if needed. So please share your feedback with us. And with that, I will basically switch to Raymond, who is going to talk about the investments we're doing on Slicer API.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Juan. It's very, very great, the demonstration. Okay, thanks everyone. My name is Raymond. I'm PM of Slicer. Today, I'm really honored to share the Slicer has been checking and is now on the way to the beta very soon. So
share your screen, please, Raymond.
Show my screen.
Share your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Share my screen.
Or you want me to show the slide right now?
No. I can share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah. So before that, let me do a brief introduction about the Slicer. Slicer actually is a visual filter. You can use Slicer to view your data by simply click on the slicer item you want. The slicer can make your report interact and friendly. So the slicer we are be able to available for the table and pivot table. So both these are can be create a slicer. So the right side is the slicers that I created for the table, and all this one is for the pivot table. And here's a design for the slicer API JavaScript design. And this for the slicer, they have a slicer collection. In the collection, they can do the create, add function, which is a create slicer, and also can get the count of the slicer in this collection. In you can get the each slicer by get item uh, from the item name. And from that, you also can get the name, also the Y style. You can also delete these slicers. And for each slicer item, we have a slicer item collection. In that, you will know the how many slicer items they have. For each slicer item, you could also check whether it's selected or not. So that is basically what the slicers are architecture. And these slicer can be slicer collection are available for both workbook and a worksheet. So you can use simply just workbook.slicers. You can get all slicers in this workbook, and worksheet.slicers can get all slicers in this worksheet. Furthermore, you can also get the active slicer in the workbook by using this API. And here's the scenarios that we are now doing. And for create slicer, position resizing, make selection, change slicer style, and the source slicer are be available in a couple of weeks in this build. So maybe you could try it later. So now I would like to do a live demo using my dev machine, and this is my dev machine, and this is a table I just created, and I can use this to create a slicer. Here's a slicer I created, and I can change position, and I also can change the style. You can see that the style is changing. Yeah, and also can select and delete the slicers. The slicer is gone. And this is cross-platform. As you can see that this demo I share is in the web. So let me go back to the Win32 to have another demo. I can create slicer here in Win32. I can change position. I can change the style. I can choose. Yeah. Also, of course, I can also use my manually interact with the slicer. I can choose, and then I can use my API to select all slicer items that can apply to this table, and then I can delete the slicers. So that is the demo I wanted to share to you. Okay, and here's some sample code. You can very easily to create a slicer by using the sheet worksheet or workbook dot slicers dot add, and you can add two basic information, which is a table name, or you can use a pivot table name, and plus you need to have a column name, and then you can use this to create a slicers. Of course, you can delete a slicer if you get this slicer from the slicer collection, and you can use slicer.delete. You can delete that. And of course, you can make a position by using the left and the top, and also make a selection. Use the selection item is selected, and then you can, if you choose true, there will be these item will be selected. Yeah, so that is that's my part. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Terrific. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Juan, for all the great information about what's happening with the Excel APIs. It's really cool to see how quickly things are evolving there. In a second, I'll share my screen. Somebody's already. Cool. All right. Whoops. So 1 second. One second, I'm sharing again. The refresh, and here we go. Okay, so that's it for the main content of today's call. Before we wrap up and get to Q&A, I want to invite you all to engage with us. If you're interested in either presenting during an upcoming community calls like Peter did today, maybe sharing with us some of the neat things you're doing with Office JS and or custom functions, we'd love to hear about that. Or if you're interested in also providing feedback about the Office add-ins documentation. I know our documentation team is always interested in understanding more about maybe things that you're struggling to understand based on the documentation we currently provide, opportunities for us to do a better job there. So if you want to engage with us, here's the AKAMS link for a form that you can fill out to connect with us. And I'll update this form later today. Earlier today in today's call, Sahel had mentioned he'd love to hear from you about feedback about the Office, Outlook JavaScript APIs and some of the things in the works there. I'll update this form to also encompass that, Sahel, so that folks can use this one form to engage with us, whether they're interested in presenting during an upcoming community call, or providing feedback about the docs, or providing feedback about Outlook APIs or other things along those lines, other JavaScript APIs. This is the one URL you can use for that, AKAMS Office Add-ins Engage. So, Doug, how are we doing on Q&A in the IM? It sounds like I think we've addressed most of them along the way.
Yeah, I think Kair and Sohail have handled, I think, pretty much everything. Cindy asked about those last links, if we could get those pasted in the chat window.
Yes, we will do that.
Here, that's the Office Add-ins Engage one. Yep.
Yep.
I'll paste that in.
Yep, so Doug will paste those in the chat window, but also keep in mind we do post this deck and the video as well of the call to the Office Dev blog. Probably usually happens a day after or sometimes 2 days after the call. So keep an eye out there as well. If you missed anything during today's call, the video and the deck will be posted there. We did have a few questions sent in kind of last minute on the web form that we publish where people can submit questions in advance of the call. We won't have time to talk about those today, but please do check the Office Dev blog. What we typically do is questions that we don't get to during the call, we'll answer those in the Office Dev blog that recaps this call. So keep an eye out for that information coming in the next couple days. So just a quick reminder about developer resources. So lots of things, places you can go to learn more about Office JavaScript APIs and the add-ins platform. Link to the developer program there, Script Lab, an excellent tool. If you haven't already used that, definitely check that out. The documentation, the Excel JavaScript API open spec that Juan mentioned earlier, and information about custom functions as well. As always, we invite you to engage with us. If you have questions or problems, questions about how to use the API, Stack Overflow is the place for those how-to type of questions. If you have issues using the APIs, so you're doing something and you're getting an error that you shouldn't be getting, or it's working on Mac but it doesn't work on Windows, please log an issue for us in the Office Dev, Office.js repo. The product team watches that repo and will engage with you there about issues. User voice, you're all aware of that, hopefully. That's where we track feature requests from customers. So if you have feature requests regarding the Office add-ins platform or JavaScript APIs, please visit user voice and either upvote the feature request if it already exists there, or log a new feature request. And lastly, you can always send a smile or a frown in Office itself, in the Office applications such as Excel or Word, to provide feedback there. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We are about out of time. We'll stay online here and answer questions via IM. I know KR and Doug are still interacting there with folks. We'll stay online here for the next few minutes until the top of the hour to engage there. And as mentioned, the recording of this call as well as the deck will be available on the Office Dev blog very soon. The recording itself will be uploaded to the Office Dev YouTube channel as well. And our next call is coming up just a month from today, or a month from now, February 13th on a Wednesday. And as always, we invite you to submit your questions ahead of time using the form. And if you don't already have the invite, please do add the recurring monthly invite to your calendar. So that's it for today's call. Thanks everyone for joining us.